The Athletic has once again teamed up with Prostate Cancer UK, and as we approach the end of 2021, we're reviewing 8 of the biggest moments that happened in football over the past 12 months. 1 in 8 men will get prostate cancer during their lives, and we want your help to keep more men with their families for longer. Well, the first moment we're going to look at are the exits of Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. Joining me is Adam Crafton, and I'll ask you, which of these was the bigger shock?
Initially the big shock was Lionel Messi leaving Barcelona because everybody expected him to extend his deal. That was his own expectation. And then there was the shock of, well, where's he going to go? Will Manchester City come back to the table? Will Manchester United or Chelsea or Real Madrid or Bayern Munich go? And in the end, it was, one phone call from Lionel Messi to Mauricio Pochettino, the PSG manager, on the Thursday night to say, I want to come and play for you. I want to go and play with Neymar like I did previously at Barcelona. And it was really a frenzied 72 hours in which Messi discovered he couldn't extend his contract, decided he was going to Paris Saint-Germain, said a tearful farewell to Barcelona, and then by the Tuesday he was a Paris Saint-Germain player.
Did Ronaldo's arrival ultimately help or hinder Man United?
Well, it certainly hindered Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. However many goals Cristiano Ronaldo may have scored in that early part of the season, Manchester United became a worse team. They conceded more goals, they were scoring less goals, they were far easier to play against. Does that mean it was a mistake to buy Cristiano Ronaldo? We will see in time to come, but clearly there was a short-term trauma of the change to style that came about. Other people will counter to say, look, problems with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's period predated Ronaldo's arrival. Ronaldo scored goals that actually probably kept Solskjaer in a job for significant parts of the first few months of the season. So it's difficult to balance out, but were Manchester United better or worse after Cristiano Ronaldo arrived? Well, you'd have to say initially worse.
Well, looking back, which of the clubs, PSG or Man United, will be happier with their moves?
At the moment, you'd have to say, neither club will be looking at what's happened as a huge success. Clearly PSG have had a fantastic commercial and financial impact of signing Lionel Messi in terms of raising their profile, enabling them to do new commercial sponsorship deals. But what they were really excited about was the show of having Mbappe, Neymar, Messi managed by Mauricio Pochettino all in tandem. And it's yet to really click. I think both of these players will be judged at the end of the season, though. If Paris Saint-Germain win the Champions League, then Messi is a fantastic signing. If they don't, then it's probably going to be judged by a lot of people as a little bit of a letdown. And in the same way, Ronaldo, when you buy Cristiano Ronaldo, Rafael Varane and Jadon Sancho in the same summer, that's moves that, you expect to go from pretenders to contenders. And at the moment, United are still, engaged in a battle to get into the top 4. So neither can claim to have been a huge success. Both have brought complications for their clubs, but there's still time for it to turn around. And with the quality that both of those players possess, then you wouldn't bet against it.
Now we're going to talk about Barcelona's epic win in the Women's Champions League. Delighted to be joined by Charlotte Harper. Charlotte, Barcelona, the first club to win the Champions League on both the men's and the women's side.
Yeah, what an achievement for them. And I think this win really opened up a whole new landscape of the women's game. We had the same winner, Lyon, since 2016, and Barcelona were the ones to dethrone them. And it wasn't as if they just scraped a 1-0 victory in the final. They thrashed Chelsea 4-0, and that was the biggest winning margin in a women's final. So it was a real statement of intent.
Why was it such a big moment?
I think, as I just alluded to, Lyon was so dominant, and it was just year after year for 5 years that they were extraordinary, Lyon. People just didn't think, who could beat them? And along came Barcelona, and it was kind of a changing of the guard for women's football.
Who were the stars of their campaign then?
I think it's very easy to say in hindsight that Alexia Putellas was a star of the campaign, considering that she's gone on to win the Ballon d'Or and the UEFA Player of the Year award, but it was Alexia Putellas. She shone, everything went through her. Barcelona captain, former captain, Vicky Losada, she's now at Manchester City. She had been at the club for her second spell, and she joined for the second time in 2016. She was a real star. In Chelsea's side, Ann-Katrin Berger pulled off some amazing saves. Fran Kirby showed her prowess, as did Pernilla Harder in the Champions League and knockout stages. PSG also gave Barcelona a run for their money, and Marie Katoto also shone.
Well, as you explained, Barcelona look unstoppable. Will they dominate again this year?
I think they will. I saw them play against Arsenal. Their technique was flawless. Their pressing is relentless. They bullied Chelsea off the ball in the final. They did so against Arsenal. So I don't see why they wouldn't dominate again. They're very, very strong in their domestic league, undefeated so far. So I think it will either be Lyon or Chelsea to really give them a run for their money. But, Barcelona, consecutive Champions League winners, why not?
This moment, I'm afraid, is on the demise of Derby County. Joining us now is Elias Burke, and I'm going to begin by asking him to sum up what on earth has happened at Pride Park.
So essentially, it all kind of leads back to 2019 when they lost in the playoff final to Villa. I mean, since then, it's been kind of a slow demise. There's been occasional controversies, obviously the car crash involving Mason Bennett, Tom Lawrence, club captain, and Richard Keogh kind of started off that demise. But there's been a lot of financial problems, and owner Mal Morris has kind of gambled Derby's future on getting promoted. It didn't happen, and then fast forwarding into this year, they entered the summer transfer window with a transfer embargo, and then towards the start of the season, I think on the 21st of September, they were handed a points deduction for entering administration. That was 12 points. Then again compounded with another 9-point deduction that they had in the middle of November. So they're now 20 points adrift in the Championship, looking ahead to probably a life in League One next season.
Well, they've had so many terrible moments in recent times, from the issues you outlined to failed takeovers and now the uncertainty ahead, which we're going to come on to in a minute. But I just want to first check in with you on Wayne Rooney. Are we able to assess his reign as manager so far in spite of the very difficult circumstances?
Yeah, so Wayne Rooney took over about a year ago, and undoubtedly that year has been very difficult for him. He obviously took over the job as his first job in management. He came literally straight from playing. And since then, I think he's had about a 24% win record, which is probably the worst, I think, since Paul Jewell's record in 2007-8, when Derby County got relegated with a record low points total in the Premier League. So on that perspective, you might say that he struggled a fair bit, but I think actually, considering the circumstances, Derby County have been pretty solid this year. I mean, they'd be 19th if they weren't hit with any points deductions, and that's a testament, and 6 points away from the relegation zone. So that's a testament to how well he's done with the squad. And actually, he revealed to us the other week that at the start of the season, he had a meeting with his staff, and he looked at the squad and thought, I mean, even if we stayed up without any points deduction with this squad, it'd be pretty much a miracle. So for 19th place and 6 points away from the relegation zone, obviously barring the points deductions, I think that's a pretty good accomplishment.
Well, you provide some light there, but where do Derby go from here? Are they doomed, or do you have some optimism?
Well, I think January is going to be a massive month for Derby. I mean, between now and January, I expect things to be pretty quiet, actually. I mean, there's not really much that the administrators can do between now and then. Once the January transfer window starts, it's expected to accelerate pretty quickly. Obviously, players, assets, they've got a few players that are worth a few quid at the moment. So they've got Max Bird, Jason Knight are two of the big names. And you'd assume that they'd attract quite a lot of interest from Premier League clubs and top Championship clubs. So let's hope that they don't try and sell those players, for pennies on the pound, essentially, because they're worth a lot to Derby. And then towards the end of the month, it's when buyers are potentially mooted, and we hope that the administrators can find a buyer before January, because otherwise, the future of Derby County could look pretty bleak.
Now for another moment, the proposed European Super League. And joining us to discuss that is Matt Slater. Matt, was this one of the biggest stories that you've been involved in covering?
It was certainly the biggest this year. I'm not sure it was the biggest I've ever covered. Things like Russia trying to cheat everybody at the Olympics, and those are big stories. But this is definitely the biggest story I've covered this year. Undoubtedly, it dominated the agenda for that crazy week. But then, it's continued to sort of rumble on for weeks and months afterwards. Huge reaction, particularly here in the UK, where fans voted with their feet. It's led to a fan-led review by the former sports minister Tracy Crouch. We're still we're still arguing and debating that. So yes, it's been the biggest football story of the year, and it's been the biggest story that I've covered.
Yeah, and I can't remember many that have had such a big reaction from fans also. They were fundamental in all of this. And I guess that leads us on to the question of whether it's truly gone away.
A good question. Yes and no. Gone away in that certainly the English teams, the six Premier League teams involved, got the message and pulled out pretty sharpish, and have been very apologetic, and have agreed to pay settlements with both UEFA and the Premier League, and are certainly trying to be a bit more contrite about things. So, yes, and like I said, the fan-led review has come out, and we've seen the recommendations, and among them is the idea of an independent regulator and a licensing system that would make this kind of thing harder in the future. And also this concept of consent from fans with shadow boards and golden shares. So, yes, however, the conditions that created the Super League, or created the desire for a Super League, haven't gone away. These clubs are still loss-making. They still love to get control of their costs. They're still chasing fans around the globe, and they still think that there's a sort of way of monetising everybody. So the Super League is still an answer for some of that. And three of them, Barca, Juve and Real, are still massively behind it, and are still, Barca and Real in particular are at war with their league, La Liga. So it's not over. It's being contested at the European Court of Justice. So no, it's not over.
In short, do you see it coming in some form, or how do you view the European football landscape in the future?
The reason that it kind of surprised people this year is that a lot of people have got used to the big clubs threatening to do something like this. And then every time they did, they got more concessions with the Champions League in particular. They got a bigger Champions League. They got more guaranteed places. They got more money. And that's happened again. So you could argue that the Champions League is now very much like a Super League, but people were arguing that a while ago. Could they be given more control? Could the big clubs be given more control over the running of that? And yes, that's happening. I think the other thing is that the Premier League is becoming a bit of a Super League as well. So there are a couple of reasons why no, it might not come back. It shouldn't come back. But as I said in my last answer, the conditions that created the Super League remain. They're not making money. They think they've outgrown their leagues. They want to have a bigger say over how they run their competition. So yes, it could, in theory, come back.
The next moment is Chelsea's men's Champions League win, and Simon Johnson is joining us to explain how Thomas Tuchel turned Chelsea into European champions so quickly.
Well, David, he essentially got the squad unified very, very quickly after replacing Frank Lampard. He also came up with a great system, went back to the Antonio Conte way of playing, three at the back. And he basically just got everyone gelling together very, very quickly, got them very organised, very tough to beat, had that defence, which was very difficult to break down. They just had a momentum. Unlike the first time Chelsea won the Champions League, there was no luck involved. It was actually quite a smooth pathway through the knockout rounds.
Who were the key men for Chelsea out in Porto?
Out in Porto, well, of course, you have to look at Kai Havertz. He scored the winning goal, certainly justified his transfer fee from the previous summer. Mason Mount with the sublime through ball, but you still have to look at the defence. Even with Thiago Silva going off, Andreas Christensen comes on in the second half, and there's no difference. Azpilicueta one side, Rudiger the other, plus the wing backs. Chelsea just made it a very comfortable evening, really.
Now, talk us through the expectations of Chelsea. For me, they look to be sky high. Would you expect them? Are they expected to retain the Champions League trophy, go on and win the Premier League title? What comes next for this Chelsea side?
Well, I think in the boardroom, the expectations will always be high, but Thomas Tuchel, from the start, has been playing it down. He's trying to keep the pressure off his squad. We've seen a recent wobble in the Premier League, but they're still a very, very good side. I'd put Manchester City and Liverpool, teams that have been there and done it in the last few years, ahead of Chelsea in the favourites category. But I still think Chelsea can run them very, very close. And as for the Champions League, I would say cup football certainly suits Chelsea. No one wants to face them in a two-legged affair in the Champions League. So I think they can certainly go a long, long way in the Champions League as well. They've got the players to do it. Injuries permitting, of course. They've had a few injury problems lately, but I think Chelsea, if they can get that defence back to what it was at the start of the season, they could be a very, very tough prospect to beat.
Okay, so the next moment is Newcastle United and their takeover by the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia in conjunction with two other parties. It was a consortium that bought them out in the autumn of 2021. And for that, who else to speak to than George Colkin, my esteemed colleague. George, PIF tried to buy Newcastle in 2020. It didn't happen. Did you think they would come back in?
Well, they went away, but they also didn't. They officially withdrew from the process, of course, but they were always there lurking in the background. There was a political attempt to drive things forward. There was then a legal attempt to drive things forward. And other members of the consortium were always saying that if the door was opened to them by the Premier League, that they would walk through it. And that's how it happened. It did, of course, happen in the end very, very quickly.
What sort of an impact has it had on the club, the fan base, and I guess the city in general?
It's a good question because it's changed everything, but in another way, Newcastle haven't changed at all. They're still struggling near the bottom of the table. They've only won one game this season, and so in those terms, nothing's changed at all. They've still got the same players. The manager has changed, but really the whole mood around the club has changed. It brought huge uplift to the city. We saw those scenes outside St James's Park when the takeover announced. There is that feeling again of everybody in the stadium from a Newcastle perspective wanting the same thing. And although that sounds obvious, it just hasn't been like that for a decade and more. Games were peppered with chanting against the owner, more recently about the manager. It's been a very divided, fractured club that hasn't felt like a club at all. And since the takeover, albeit with those same sort of distressing results, there is a feeling of togetherness about the club, which is pretty extraordinary and takes some getting used to, really.
You mentioned these distressing results. Finally, how important is survival in the Premier League to the club's hopes and the ownership's hopes of long-term success?
Well, if you speak to people around the consortium, they say that relegation means that their project gets put back 12 months, but that's a very sort of sunny way of looking at it, I guess. You know, they are talking about trying to win the Premier League, Champions League within 5 to 10 years. That's a tall order as it stands. Going down wouldn't help them. And I suppose, you know, I've seen two relegations under Mike Ashley's ownership. Both times they came back up at the first time of asking, but that's not an easy thing to do. And, you know, Newcastle did come up as champions both times, but both of those seasons were a real struggle. It's game after game after game. They only came up as champions on the last day of the season last time. I'm sure it's something that they want to avoid at all cost. And so, you know, January comes at them. It's a very important month. They have got to try and do business. They've got to try and shore up a defence which is leaking way too many goals.
This moment is all about England's Euros campaign and their run to the final, where of course they were beaten by Italy. Matt Slater, how do you reflect on England's campaign?
Well, it was great. You know, it was really, you know, having got to the semis of the World Cup, they then go, you know, one stage further. They beat Germany. They thump Ukraine. They beat Denmark. They did lots of great things. They progressed through the tournament. They settled on a sort of playing style that worked. Gareth Southgate, just really started to grow as a manager. Young, vibrant team. The messaging they sort of sent around taking a knee and what have you, I thought was really, really positive. They just fell at the last hurdle, didn't they? I mean, they took the lead in the final and the better team won. They sort of stopped playing. They sort of, that lack of belief that we saw against Croatia at Russia, in Russia 2018, sort of crept back in, the ability to sort of control the game, control the ball. So, look, massive progress. I really enjoyed it. Everybody in my family really enjoyed it. And I think the country did too.
Why does there remain a nagging doubt about Gareth Southgate's England despite final appearance, semi-final appearance at the previous tournament?
Well, I suppose it's that twice now in these sort of big games, they've had an amazing start and then it looks like he's been a little bit out-coached. I mean, that might be unfair. I think it probably is unfair because, both those teams, Croatia and Italy, had really, really good players who kind of rose to the occasion. I think the thing about the Italy game, we were at home. We had a sort of fantastic advantage there. Italy are a really, really good team, but we had this great start with players in form and we just let the game drift away. And it just, particularly the second half, I thought was really, really poor. And Gareth Southgate doesn't look anyway at this point in his sort of managerial career to have that ability to kind of change things as they're happening. He sets the team up well. He's great at the man management. It's just those sort of in-game moments that he appears to be good, but not very good.
Last but not least, a story that you've covered in some depth. What did you make of the scenes that occurred at Wembley around the final?
Well, look, I thought they were absolutely appalling. They were among the worst I'd ever seen. They were shocking. I thought they were absolutely dreadful. But it doesn't really matter what I think, because we've now got this independent review that the FA commissioned, which is absolutely fantastic. It's very, very thorough, and it pretty much spells it out. They've spoken to everyone, the Metropolitan Police, the FA, Brent Council, everyone that kind of needed to be involved that day has had their say. And she couldn't, the person that wrote the report couldn't have been more categoric. We got away with a very close tragedy that day. People could have died, and it could have been something that we're ashamed of. I'm pretty ashamed of it anyway, but it's something that we could all be ashamed of for a long, long time. So that was a very near miss, dreadful scenes, something to reflect on for a very long time. They can't happen again.
Next up, the sacking of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer by Manchester United. Adam, was it a long time coming? And are you surprised that it took so long?
Strangely, it wasn't a long time coming in the eyes of the Manchester United board. I mean, they wanted to give Solskjaer all the time possible to turn it round. That's why, when Manchester United were being played off the pitch by teams such as Aston Villa, Everton, Villarreal at the start of the season, there was a sense that, Solskjaer had incrementally improved performances, league finishes over a couple of years. So let's see, give him a bit more time, he'll get it right. Then, they lose 5-0 at home to Liverpool, still gets more time after that. Loses 2-0 against Manchester City at home, still gets more time after that. And then eventually the Watford 4-1 finished him off. Should it have come sooner? I think there's a lot of people now who reflect with hindsight to say that Manchester United, after failing to beat Villarreal in the Europa League final in Gdansk in May, that may have been the perfect time in everyone's interest to say Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did a great job for a couple of years, and that would have been the time to take it on to the next level.
Clearly the fans loved him, but did the players?
Depends who you ask. I think by the end of any managerial reign, you'll always get sources close to players giving a lot of criticism. I think for the vast majority of Solskjaer's time there, he was liked by the players. It's not that normal for a manager to be able to go in, say goodbyes, spend a lot of time with players on the day that he actually leaves the club, to then give the next manager, as Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did for Ralf Rangnick, 2 hours on the phone talking through the squad, saying, his personality, strengths, weaknesses. So I think he was more liked than maybe people imagine.
How will his tenure be remembered?
I think with greater distance, with greater fondness. Instantly, I think, the short-term reaction is, what a disastrous couple of months. But I think a lot of people will, in time, come to see that he's left a squad that's in better shape than what he inherited. Reasonable league finishes, the teams in the Champions League for back-to-back seasons. That's not happened very often since Sir Alex Ferguson retired. So could have been a lot better, but also, it wasn't as disastrous as the end perhaps indicated.
Do we believe United have a long-term successor in mind, or will they take their time on that?
Well, we know they have Ralph Rangnick on a contract till the end of the season with a 2-year consultancy role. You know, as ever with Manchester United, there's a feeling if Rangnick does well, then maybe, if he does so well, he could convince them to give him the job full time or nominate himself to get the job full time. But I think, the longer term targets, I'd be looking at Mauricio Pochettino still, Eric Ten Hag at Ajax, Brendan Rodgers at Leicester still keeps getting mentioned at times as well. So I'd say those are the 3 names that come up most often.
Prostate Cancer UK is celebrating a year working with The Athletic to reach you, the fans, with an important message to help save men's lives. 1 in 8 men will get it during their lives. That's a dad, granddad, brother, partner, or best mate. Help fund life-saving research this Christmas and keep more dads, brothers, partners, and mates with their families for longer. Text Athletic to 70004 to donate £10 or visit prostatecanceruk.org/The Athletic to help beat prostate cancer. Please ask the bill payer's permission, standard network rates apply, and 100% of the donation will be received by Prostate Cancer UK. We also have that link for you in the description below. Men, we are with you.